allocated for the fire department, but we do have a couple of little things to do first, i.e. the minutes of our last meeting that went out. Do people have any changes, comments, improvements to make?
There's a typo. I'll take it up with you.
Yeah. Typos are,
Unless it changes the content, then you need to let
Well, it's
them
either
know.
vice or vice, you have to decide which you want.
Move on.
do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, I guess it's unanimous.
I'm sorry, I will abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't here for most of the meeting.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody have anything before we give the floor over to the fire department? All right, it's yours.
FD.
I think most of you know me. Aaron Rich. Yeah, been on the fire department for a long time. So we're looking at, on the fire department, there's kind of two things we're looking at this year that are pretty large changes. One, we'll start with the easier one for me to talk about, which is the rescue plant. So we currently have the, is it 2013? I think it's the 2013 police SUV that we retrofitted for rescue use. And it's kind of reaching the end of its life. The original intent was to keep looking at recycling police cruisers. But with the EOC trailer, emergency management trailer rather, and our utility trailer that we use for our UTV, it looks like a 2500 platform. 3/4 ton pickup truck is a lot better platform to be looking at that. And we're looking to do a 10-year cycle on those so we can extend that out for a longer time period. I've received quotes from Ford and Dodge. They're between $48,000 and $52,000 for the vehicle. All the upfitting that we would need for the fire rescue service adds about $50,000 to it. Between the lighting quotes, the lettering, radio, tonneau covers, the slide-out trays, and the EMS cabinet that would go in the back, ends up about $105,000. I'm still waiting on a GMC dealer to provide a quote. They haven't received their allocation of the municipal funding to determine which dealership is going to be allowed to give putting quotes out. So as soon as I get that, as of last Friday, I think the bid process had closed and they were beginning allocation, so hopefully we can get a GM quote. And I'd love to see that significantly less than the Ford or the Ram. I don't anticipate that, so we're kind of looking at that 48 to 52,000 for the vehicle platform, and then pretty close to that to do the upfitting for what we need to do. And looking at a 10-year period for that vehicle to be in use.
I have one question. Years ago, we had a special truck for rescue that was much more truck. And we had an issue with a number of the volunteers either not being able to or not comfortable operating.
It was the worst platform in the history of GMC. And at the time, the town had had some issues with a Ford platform, and I can't remember the exact reason, but we went to that, the GMC Kodiak.
We wanted to
had
try something
Yeah.
because we had trouble with one of the Fords.
And the GMC Kodiak had a great tight turning radius, and that is the only positive thing that I can say about it in my time period driving it. So we don't want to get to a vehicle that's too heavy for our average responder to drive. So especially on the EMS side, we're trying to keep a light platform, we're trying to keep short wheel, to get in and out of the driveways. And also give us the ability to have a vehicle that we have a tree on the wires call, or we have barricades we need to get set up. We're not running our own pickup trucks, running stuff out, throwing out supplies. So it's been a burden on our personal vehicles for a long time, and we're trying to shift away from that to put something into a town-owned pickup truck. I also, from my other hat, like the idea of a municipal vehicle that's insured through the municipal insurance, pulling the municipal trailers that we're moving around. Yeah, so, that's that part. Any questions on that?
Questions or comments from any members of the board?
Yeah,
How are you gonna pay for that?
we're asking you for money.
Are you gonna take it out of operating money, or you gonna take it out of capital reserve?
We're hoping it would come out of the capital reserve fund for the vehicle funding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
have a question, is this gonna replace some of the rollout of the trucks, fire trucks, when they don't?
that's the hope. So, one of the things that we're looking at is our 2004 engine it's a 2004 E1 Typhoon, great truck, it's pre-emissions, which has been really, really nice for us. So, there's a push to say, hey, how far can we extend this? It just came back last week from getting a whole new suspension in the front end, it's supposed to get tires, but we'll get that fixed. So we're putting money into that, and we're exploring, does it make sense to do a major retrofit to that and extend its service for 10 to 12 years, which includes electronics and kind of going through the entire thing? Or do we look at a replacement kind of in the same schedule with a 2028 year, is that when that truck was due to be replaced? We're looking at all avenues. Those replacements, as you can see in the CRF thing, are, it's kind of up and to the right. That truck we purchased for $225 roughly, and we're looking at $670,000 to replace it if we replaced it this year. In '28, they're talking about $815,000. So it's crazy how expensive these are getting. And it's always the game of, do you buy it right now? Or do you go farther out? And we're looking at doing everything we can to extend the truck in a safe way and see how much more we can get out of it. The hope is to bring this rescue in to reduce some of the times that those engines have to roll. And if we are able to ever find a Porsche utility vehicle that we can use to also supplement that through some grant programs, that would make it so the engines do not have to go out to some of the more trivial calls, and we can try to save that larger capital investment for the calls that they're required. Yeah.
The one time I had a fire department in my department, we ran into an issue with, there was an age, when the truck was 20 years old, it no longer counted for an airport rescue trip.
Yep.
Is there anything like that for structural?
I deal with the insurance side of municipalities across New Hampshire and Vermont. I insure fire trucks that are as old as the early 80s. There has to be good maintenance, there has to be the proper testing, you have to do the pump testing. Mike probably can rattle off more of these things right off the tip of his tongue than I can, but to my knowledge, as long as you keep up with the appropriate maintenance and everything is in certification.
Well, this was an FAA requirement
Sure.
for airports.
Anything government, I would assume that they're gonna spin it, which is also why we're able to potentially get some of these vehicles in, like we got our UTV and like we got some other equipment. So,
What is that ratio like between like sort of when you need a big fire truck versus when like a pickup would do, or?
that depends on what happens on the call. In all honesty, like we've been out, classic example was the December ice storm we had a couple of years ago. We had fire trucks scattered throughout the valley, out on calls, cutting out trees, doing things like that, so dealing with carbon monoxide alarms, everything else that kind of mixed into it, and in the middle of that, everyone had to gather together quickly and go fight a structure fire. So, I don't think there's any perfect scenario. I personally would like to reduce the amount that those engines run a little bit, and I think we can start to do this. I don't have a perfect answer for you.
Yeah, I know,
terms of
but
like
it
a
seems,
ratio.
like, at least the argument seems to make some sense, right?
Yeah.
Cause these, like, buying a new fire truck, you're either gonna draw from the capital reserve fund, you can do a
Right.
bond, right? That payment needs to be made, either back into the capital reserve fund, right? And
Right.
that fire truck can go another 8 years, 10 years for some reason, that's payments we're not making.
That's the hope, is that the $100,000 vehicle here and hopefully a grant vehicle can extend this vehicle for a longer time period. But
How much room do you have there in the new firehouse?
We
You've got
can fit-
basically 4 doors.
we have 5.
Well, the
Yep.
side door,
The side door is where rescue's been for
Since you got-
2 years.
the side door will take an F-350,
Yeah, I put my
F-250.
truck in there pretty consistently. Yep,
All right, I didn't realize there was
Yep.
enough room for it.
yep, nope, it backs in right behind where the tanker is. Yeah, I just put my truck in there the other day to change the winter tires over.
That's not very good.
So, yeah.
Excuse me, but additionally, as we sit there, it's definitely better to have a municipally owned vehicle when we're responding to municipal equipment or towing municipal equipment for the municipal association. But there are those times of the year when we post the roads and dairy delivery stuff, fuel oil, in a pinch can do it, and emergency vehicles. But when we are bringing something that's like, 12 tons over the posted steep limit for weight, it can cause tremendous amounts of damage, which is why, it's just another thing that, the $100,000, it's not gonna pay for itself in a year, but within the lifespan of it, it can reduce like $10,000 a year probably, when we go out onto Breck Hill Road or Preston Hill Road and bury up the engine to the front axle.
God help us, Davidson at times.
Also, it's operating
Or,
costs.
yeah,
Be a little
Davidson
less.
Lane,
Right.
yeah, and so, those are when we've caused, just, problems for religion.
I'm surprised there isn't a requirement like the FAA's for the airport crash trucks.
Yeah, there is requirements in their guidelines, they're not mandated, like the federal government, for government installation or airports.
Well, this was just for airport, whether it's Spain Airport or a government airport.
Yeah, I don't know, that's
We were
been
both-
outside my, I hope to never work on an airport.
Yeah. You don't wanna have to buy a Oshkosh T6. You think these trucks are expensive?
Yeah. So,
Yes.
so that's the rescue part. Budget, we are looking at, what we believe, is the, pivot for Lyme fire for, the long term. We have a very healthy department, which I can tell you, if you look around the valley, is not everywhere. And I say the valley, but I can tell you across New Hampshire and Vermont, I talked with fire chiefs from Newport, Vermont, down to Burlington, and the same in New Hampshire, and it is a struggle. It is a real struggle to keep people in it, and Lyme is in an interesting position in a lot of ways where we have a lot of our firefighters who are my age or above, or a very small segment that kind of in that high school to college year. We don't have a lot of that 22 to 32-year-old person in town, and a lot of that is just the way that the planning and zoning is gone, how the affordability for younger people to be in town, so we've worked really hard to, I all but talked about saying I need to bribe Patty that every single time someone moves into town that is young, under the age of 30, that she lets me know, so I can go visit them and see if we can get them in the fire department. So we've tried to do as much as we can, and we have a very healthy fire department. With that, and the never-ending increase of administration, we're looking at trying to find ways to, we think, get ahead of the problems that are coming and are affecting other departments, and make it so that this is more sustainable. The hours required of myself and many of the others in this room are consistently accelerating beyond what I think is sustainable in our current setup. So we are looking at trying to find a way to offset that. And you see a couple line items there that are directly reflecting that. As well as some EMS changes tied to more members on that side of the house, as well as a pivot from, hey, you're an EMT volunteering in the town of Lyme, you're expected to pay for your own continuing ed and your relicensing and still volunteer for the squad. So we're working on pivoting that towards an online education platform to make it so our people can hit their CEs through that. It ends up being, I think Andy's saying it's about $250 per person. We have 10 people on the EMS squad, so it's a $2,500 increase. And with that, we also have a healthy fast squad. So we have 10 people, so we're gonna need more equipment, more supplies. We've gone from a 4-person squad to a 10-person squad in the last few years, and it's exciting. The only downside to it is it's gonna cost a little more to equip all the people.
Don't we have to do that because people don't live and work in town? In order to have people that can respond, have more than you would have had to have, say, 25 years ago when people worked in town?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking, but for us, we are definitely seeing less of our membership working in town during the days, and I think the ability for us to have a larger roster to help cover that in the hopes that, hey, 2 or 3 people are in town, and that's certainly what we shoot for on the fire department side. We're shooting for people coming to all the trainings that they can come to. We're trying to hold trainings to a high standard, and then if the pager goes off and they're available, they come. And they're probably gonna come to a lower percentage of calls than they did, 30 years ago. But it's really hard for someone to say, hey, you gotta leave your job in Concord and drive to Lyme. So we just don't have that percentage of population that are here. The big thing, what I'm looking at, and I think what we're looking at, is how the next chief is gonna come in. Who's gonna replace me, and how we can get to a point that, frankly, there's enough, there's a good enough situation so whoever comes in after me can step into the role, because I honestly think whoever follows me is likely gonna have to be a heavy part-time person to handle the role.
Now, a number of places you run into a problem when you do this, where you get mostly volunteers and you have 1 or 2 paid people.
Yep.
In the departments. And it doesn't always work out.
It doesn't. What doesn't work out right now in general is darn near everything people have tried. I hear what you're saying. I've seen, there's a department not far from here that has a full-time chief and not a lot of other people coming. I don't have the perfect answer. I spend a lot of time, I wish I could say that that's a part of my brain I could turn off, but the whole ADD component kicks in hard on how do we make this sustainable. I think we're on the right path. I think we're setting things up for a good future run. But this is really where we need to be. So,
Can I add something to that now?
yeah,
I think I listened to your concern about, paid versus volunteer. It was something that I thought about a lot when I was chief.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, some of the folks on this board were there at the time when I started to talk about doing something about the stipend and making it,
Yeah.
more sustainable for someone coming in, and I think that kind of stalled. But I think at this point, we have kind of erred on the side of no stipend to low stipend, not meaning anything. And I think what we're seeing as a result of that is a real vulnerability that if we lose the person at the top, their commitment, their energy, their drive, everything's gonna fall apart. Because we have really good, middle officers and volunteers, and it does take a lot more numbers to cover the bases than it did 30 years ago. Because I think just the complexity of what a family's like today, most people are both working, running kids here and there, volunteering, like, there's less opportunities for a person to serve, so we need more people. So the person at the top has more management, personnel issues, training, equipment, not to mention all the regulations that have increased. So I guess what I'm getting at is, what I was trying to get started years ago, I think needs to rapidly catch up, so that the person at the top has a little bit of compensation, so they just have a little more help to get the job done, a little more, something to make it all worthwhile. I'll just finish that by saying, serving as chief was a, a great privilege, but now that I'm not chief, I would honestly say I would rather be running into a burning building than be the guy outside as chief, so it's a lot of work, and, so, yeah, anything we do to help them
Well,
out.
I mean, my fire department was a little different issue because it was mixed military and civilian.
Mhm.
If you want interesting conflicts,
Yeah,
that really breeds them.
I truly don't know the answer, to what you said about, does this potentially erode morale? What I did to, vet that is brought all of our membership in and said, okay, here's what we're proposing. I want everyone to push out any concerns, anything else you have. And the entire department was behind what we were talking about doing. So I think to a degree, it also depends on who's running it. I think if you have a caustic personality, that it probably could cause some issues. So I hope to not become that person ever. And
Quit before you do.
right, and I think that's really it, and I think that's what I'm trying to find is, I don't think that this is something that, should be I wanna say life sentence, I don't think that's the right way to say it, but, I really think that this should be turned over. And I think it's healthy for the department to turn it over. I think the next person coming in provides a different energy, and I think it's good to find that, have that internal perpetuation. And I'm trying to identify the next person coming through after me. And so that's my biggest goal, is to make sure that whoever is ready to step up, when they're ready to step up, has something that's sustainable, and when they're sitting there talking to their family, they can say, listen, this is the extra amount of time I'm gonna have to put into it. Maybe they're working a part-time job, and in conjunction with this, it now becomes something that's more tenable. So,
Chief?
yeah.
If I could add, as the chief, before Chief Mundy, one of the reasons that I think that the Lyme Fire Department has been able to maintain a substantial cadre and number of firefighters who are willing to volunteer, where Thetford, Orford, Fairleigh, Paramount, even in Bradford are failing. When you look at, the Lyme Fire Department is able to put out more people to a fire call than those three departments basically combined. Is you need to, the people who want to volunteer and are gonna maintain, and they're gonna donate, and they're gonna give a bunch of time for training to learn how to do it, to wake up in the middle of the night and go to calls, to respond to the needs of our community, is the leadership ends up doing all of the crappiest jobs, all of the burden, all of the things that are not fun for a volunteer. Cause you try to take that off the equation, off the table, to be able to maintain and keep morale up. And that investment towards compensating leadership who are taking care of, time-consuming stuff that is not that much fun, and it's just a burden. That's why, and that's the only way we're able to see how we can maintain the numbers for volunteers that we have. And it pales in comparison to the cost of a single, if we had to hire somebody, we're looking at startup costs for first year, including retirement, salary, and benefits, like $125,000 to $140,000 a year for one. And we need to have at least two, probably four. So there's value in it.
And Tom Frawley, and you folks heard from me before, so I won't bore you with that whole speech again, but this is on top of the fact that we're dealing with a significant double-digit increase in call volume. So we're managing just that. That's not changing, it's just continuing to ramp up. So managing that, managing all the volunteers that are associated with that is a unsustainable volunteer job. We've gotta delegate those duties, we've gotta split that duty apart, and we've gotta compensate the folks who are officers properly for this. And I think if people in town knew how many hours these volunteers put into this, and what they actually do, they'd be appalled that we're not doing a better job of taking care of them.
And that's where the bridge closed.
Yeah.
Judy's trying to say
sorry.
something.
So the rapid or heightened increase in the number of calls, is it because those other departments are failing and you're going to more out-of-town calls, or is it more?
No,
And I'm not
that's-
saying you shouldn't
that's not
do
a-
that.
That's
I'm
not a
just curious.
significant number of those calls. That's not part of our increase. And if you look at Lebanon, Hanover, any of the surrounding larger towns in the Upper Valley, they all have a comparable increase in call volume
So
between fire and EMS.
every community is
Every
having
community is
more
experiencing that
incidents.
same thing. And it's a combination of, we're dealing with many more climate emergencies, we dealt with COVID, and a heightened awareness about the medical community. People are a little bit more inclined to call 911. We're dealing with aging in place. We're encouraging, communities to wanna do that, and we're a very robust aging place. I appreciate that. I'm aging in place.
Yeah, well, a few people on this table feel that way
Yeah,
too.
resemble that remark there, thank you. So I think those three,
And
those,
mutual aid storms too.
and those things, that climate emergencies, yeah, those are the things that have increased our call volume, none of which are gonna decrease.
Right,
So, I sit here as one of the volunteers who's been around for 20-plus years and have had the pleasure of working with these three chiefs, and we are blessed. And, the reason we can fill a room with volunteers to talk about fire budgets is because of these guys. And that's good management, and that takes a lot, and we really need to be better prepared to take care of those guys. I mean, it's asking a lot for somebody to say, well, would you volunteer to be an officer or a chief here? Oh, and yeah, we know you got a day job. Okay, so,
Now
can
you
you
have a
do
night
this
job.
second day job too?
Off to the daytime and the night job.
Yeah.
And another day job.
Yeah, I did give this out to the budget committee in the prior thing, but one of the things that kind of struck me with 2022 is, it was before the bridge closed and we did see, like, that was what I thought was an anomaly year. I thought it was kind of like, hey, this is a step above. And the trend was kind of going across pretty linear up, and then there was like, hey, this little bubble. 23 kind of fell back a little bit. 24 right now is almost at where 23 ended. And we're gonna be right in line with 22 or higher than 22 if trends continue. I'm hoping that we can get through October, November, and December without massive snow events and without structure fires and all those things that kind of ramp this up, but we're not seeing that as the anomaly, it seems to be the continued trend. So, and I'll tell you from the insurance side, we're seeing so many structure fires, we're seeing so many larger events, and I believe that unfortunately the manufacturing process that occurred during COVID put a lot of appliances and a lot of other things into communities that probably didn't make it through QC, or if it did, questionably made it through QC, but they're just like, hey, send it. So we're seeing a lot of, a big increase in that type of failure, which goes from vehicles all the way to household appliances.
Household appliance, people, and I do think that for just looking statewide, the reality is we are seeing a dramatic, like 15 or 16% increase on dishwasher fires, refrigerator meltdown, and it's all the stuff that's been deferred and, neglected maintenance on appliances where through pandemic, nobody would come in. You couldn't schedule something, and we're starting to see it, and statewide.
And I think everybody's experienced, we have a really lousy manufacturing, post-COVID scenario that we'll all deal with. The stuff that we got is not good.
One other comment I'd like to make is I found that in my career, if you wanna get the best work out of people, you gotta give them the best tools. And for a long time, we've been, shall we say, cheap on tools in the fire department. So I always have a concern when we're not getting the tools.
Even more important than tools is safety equipment for your volunteers who don't need to be laying their health and their life on the line on top of volunteering.
Yeah, well, that's part of
And
the
we've come a
tools.
long way, Mike Kinsley was a big proponent of that, so.
And
yeah.
my concern is that, in our effort over the years to pinch pennies, we may not have been getting the safety equipment and the other kinds of tools. I mean, we'd have hoses on the trucks that were 30 years old, for example.
We just got rid of our last 3.
So, I mean, I have a concern that, we're giving people the tools to do their job, which includes the safety equipment.
So in '22, I came to the board and we talked about moving capital reserve funds up. I think at that time it was kind of in a $5,000 cycle, so we looked at putting our cardiac monitor into that CRF fund. We looked at doing, increasing some of the bunker gear allocation per year. We looked at radios, we looked at a few other things that were kind of the critical components, including the air packs. And we have outfitted a large number of our people in recent years, continuing the standards with the bunker gear. And the board made a big step up in that from 5,000, I think, to 20,000. It's been 20,000 the last couple. I would say, again, I kind of broke that out here and showed, hey, this is what those are looking like. I think we're still under that a little bit, but it's not going from 5,000 to $20,000 gap. With this, and our budget, we've been able to buy a lot of the big equipment pieces. Every year as a fire chief, I think, when you look at my budget right now, what's been spent year to date, I'm like hoping we can make it through spring, summer, and fall without breaking anything major. And if we don't break anything major, then we buy some of the things that are the next step up for, like last year I was able to get a couple thermal imaging cameras. Things like that are tools that help us in our job. So we're trying to do all the things that you're talking about and continue to push it forward, at the same time recognizing that there's some unpredictability in what we're gonna break. We have a structure fire, we end up breaking 3 or 4 tools, we have a thermal imaging camera go out, things like that. We do the best we can to forecast what's going to happen,
Well, thank goodness you haven't had the big one where you lose a truck.
yeah, we're, geez.
There's
Yeah,
insurance for those, right?
absolutely.
Yes, there is.
But it would take 2+
Well,
years to get this
some
replaced.
larger cities are self-insured for that type of thing.
Yeah.
Let's don't do
I
that.
can remember when New Haven responded to a fire in Boston and lost one of their
Well,
trucks.
Montpelier did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Total loss of the truck.
it happens, I mean,
It takes 2 years, yeah.
I'll tell you, in the time I've been on the fire department, when I first started going to structure fires, you looked at the smoke and it was darker, but it was a grayish dark smoke. Now it is the thickest black smoke you've ever seen. And it is the continuing evolution of filling all of our houses with more and more plastic. So.
And that's toxic when you go in there.
And it burns fast and hot, and that's one of the reasons we pushed so hard to have a 2-engine tanker company. It worked very well at the last 2 major structure fires we've had in Lyme, where we've kept it to essentially area of origin, which doesn't happen a lot anymore. So props to all these guys for last fire, because I was listening to it from Nashville, pulling my hair out. But we have a good thing going, we have good equipment in place, we're aggressive in replacement. I don't have any major fears about what you're saying about anything being dilapidated. We are finally ahead in hose issues. This year is the first year that I can say we have acquired more than we've blown in hose testing. So we're finally, I think, beyond that trend of dumping $4,000 or $5,000 a year to replace what we paid $2,000 to blow things up. So I don't feel like we have any gap there. Does anybody else feel
No,
differently?
I think, every hose gets tested, every SCBA gets tested, every pump gets pressure tested, every truck gets inspected, and the gear all gets washed after every fire. So we're doing a better job of maintaining, and that just makes the chief busier, because every one of those things has to be arranged and paid for and documented, and, volunteers showing up to make sure all those things happen. But, yeah, and we paid, we've added those budget items in there to make sure it gets done, which is
Now,
great.
just
but-
because I'm at this stage asking you, do you need more, that doesn't mean I would vote to give
No,
me more
no,
when it comes to that stage of the budget
But,
process.
but it does, I'm just getting at the administrative end of getting all those things done, because NFPA requires all that, and if you wanna be a volunteer department that's, up to par, you gotta make sure it's all done, so.
Who wants to,
Yeah.
question?
You have the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yep, so-
What those dollars mean?
This was set in 2022, so, starting from the top, the Zolac series is our cardiac monitor that we take out to the vast majority of our medical calls. So that allows us to do early EKG recognition of major heart conditions that require activations at the hospital, so that as people come into the hospital, they wheel right through the emergency room and go into surgery. So that is a critical piece that we have in our department. It mirrors, we purchased that the same year that Hanover purchased their new models. So it's on a 10-year cycle, that every 10 years they're doing this, I think it's 10. And,
But
yeah.
just, I do want to get the detail.
Yep.
So in 2025.
Yep.
If that's what we're talking about, is for the Zolak series, is 11,250.
There should be that much in there.
So you wanna take that out or put it in?
Nope, that's where the amount should be, and then in 2030, we're looking at withdrawing the 30,000.
Okay.
So I was trying to basically say, hey, here, like, starting from zero, this is what we need to be doing every year to kind of get to the point that when we drop.
So, all right, so humor me just for a minute. So 11,250 in
Yep.
2025, is that money going in? Or is that the balance you wanna have on
That's the
hand?
balance I wanna have in that fund.
Okay.
So that was assuming,
How do we, when we get to the warrant?
Yep.
And you have the,
Yep.
the capital reserve request, how do we know how to handle the dollars that are here and put them into this year's appropriation for?
The bottom line, yeah.
the bottom line.
The 26,750 is the amount
Yeah,
you need
but
to
that
put
doesn't
in.
include the radios.
That does include,
It includes everything.
yeah.
I just added it up, maybe I made a mistake. I don't know,
So
but-
the radios, let's go back here, again, that part was from 22, so we have purchased
It's
couple.
okay, I'm just
three,
trying to make the
Yeah.
numbers balance, so if you add them up, your line item says for Zoll, SBA, and
Yep.
FF gear, but it doesn't include the line above, which is the radio number.
Cause that's the balance. And the-
Right.
That's not, you can't total these up and come up to the 23,750. These are just the balances that should be in the account, so you have to total the difference between 25 and 24.
correct, I might have that sum, hold on.
That's okay, I just,
No, I have the Excel sheet here, so I should be able to pull up the,
you understand what I was
I
trying to get to, right?
Nope.
So it's,
I have it.
I mean, what would be nice if you had the adds and the deducts year by year for each category
Okay.
or the categories as a whole, so we could see how the money's coming in for
Yep.
taxes and where it's going out to purchase something at whatever time you're
Okay.
recommending the purchase, and then, and demonstrating that there'd be the money on hand in the fund at that time to do the 10-year or whatever cycle you wanna be in.
It's interesting, because 2 years ago I was told, put it in this format. So I'll give you
You
whatever,
just
how.
need to
Bill,
give it to
Bill, we
me,
can provide
and
that.
I'll put it in there,
Yeah.
because I
You
have
can
the separate
completely provide
lines and
that.
everything.
It's more FYI, because you're gonna come up with a warrant article anyways, but this would put it in a timeline that's beyond this year. Right, it would show how you're going to get to $30,000 in 2030.
I,
We can do that.
yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
it will,
that's, yeah,
it will, just, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
You can
Well,
just-
I mean, we've gotta put, there are other people using that same capital reserve fund that you use for your fire trucks.
Right, this,
So we've gotta consistently add the money to buy the highway trucks.
correct.
Right, but this is
et
the
cetera.
fire safety equipment one that we
This is
specifically
outside of
talked
that.
about, and that's separate.
Yeah, this is a separate fund that only the fire
Yeah,
department.
there, we can get together and do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
So-
the other thing is you've got the Bessie Hall fund that gives you some money
which
too.
has been, used every single year.
Yeah.
And it's, the bill is coming towards you right now.
what it would do would be, it would demonstrate that your objective of having the money
Yep.
to do what you're proposing to do would be there, and how you're gonna get the money in, so it's available to take it out, that was.
Yeah, no, and that's what I tried to set up in saying that 23, it had to be at 26,750, 24 at 23,750,
Yep, yep.
and it goes forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, I can do the net change and do
Yep.
my own
Yep.
analysis, but the other thing was, I just wondered, you know, where the radios were coming into that bottom.
So the radios, that's why the first year was at 26,750,
Yeah.
and we had 20,000 go into it, and
Mhm.
I found ways to try and get some of the stuff, we looked at some used radios because it wasn't,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what we did to cover that first
yeah,
wave.
right.
We have a couple more radios, coming to finally get Tanker onto the same radio platforms that Engine One and Engine Two has. So that order will go in, pretty quick. And then, yeah, then we go forward.
Yeah.
So no, I'll give Dina the exact plugs, which is, I mean, it's 2032, we gotta have 100 grand sitting there for SCBA's.
Mhm.
Fire gear, it's, you guys contributing 8,500 into that per year has worked. We're trying to get to the point that we're replacing gear outside of a single event where all of a sudden 30 pieces of gear have to be done at the same time. So luckily, we're having a trickle of new members coming in, at the same time, some gear is coming out, so we're buying 2 to 3 sets a year, and it's sustaining.
And so that doesn't matter that you don't have the gear the same for everybody?
No, we buy the same style.
Yeah, but there have to be changes in,
Yeah, very minor manufacturing. People get used to what their equipment is. I think the only major shift right now between the last few sets of gear is where the striping has been. And
This is bunker gear, not
yeah,
breathing
and
apparatus.
some of ours have the clasp in the front and some of them have the plastic clips.
so that's clothing, it's
Yeah,
not.
no, it's clothing.
So
It's-
is it the breathing apparatus that you try and buy all at once?
Yes.
Yes.
That we try to get at once, so that's, we have all 10 come in at the same time, so that no matter which pack you get, it's all identical.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was
Yep,
thinking of.
yep.
So I was surprised that you changed courses there.
No, we try to stay with that, course.
Clothing is more important to get the right size for the person.
Yeah,
Where
and,
the stripes are.
and have people be very comfortable in how to put it on,
Quickly.
quickly and effectively.
Yeah.
They also make them now where the name in the back peels off, so you can move the gear from one person to another. And then if we have someone who's not doing interior firefighting, we can use gear that's past its expiration date according to NFPA, but still totally comfortable and usable. And so we don't, just throw it out, we tend to kind of recycle it, if you will.
Well, you know, some
Yeah.
people have to direct traffic that don't.
Which is more dangerous than running in a burning building. Like, all due respect, like, holy God.
You should be in front of my house every once in a while.
Yeah, no, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road, it's probably my least favorite thing that we do. Especially when it's raining and foggy,
Yeah.
so.
All right. Any more comments or questions or coming from the committee?
Aaron, the Fast Squad, I think
Yes.
that's what you said,
Yep.
has sort of larger membership. Is there an ideal number of people or membership? Because it, with larger membership comes larger cost.
Every single one we can get.
Okay. And then-
I mean, I'm being honest, like, I know it sounds tongue in cheek, but, I find in our EMS, we tend to have, if we bring 5 people in, 2 stick, 1 sticks for 5 years. And we have to keep throwing the numbers at it. Do you think that's,
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
I mean, I wish I could say, we just put a group of 8 through, which I got granting from the state of New Hampshire. We have 3 that have stayed in that, and we just keep trying.
It has a lot to do with the requirements that you have to meet to stay certified.
Mhm.
And that is a much larger burden than it is for those of us that direct traffic
Dive in
and
the
the things
buildings.
that are on fire.
Well, I guess it's from a budgetary perspective,
Yeah.
because the more people you have, the more cost we will
And
have.
The reality is, we're kind of looking at about $1,000 per person, like on this annual budget. I mean, it's not, a lot of the supplies we're able to all use cohesively. It just gets down to our individual kits, the bags that we carry with us. And one of the things that we've really pushed in the last few years is getting AEDs out in the community. So there's only a couple pockets in town right now that we don't have an AED 5 minutes from a chest if everybody's home. So we're in pretty good shape. And we have an AED fund that's outside of all of this that we've built up, and we're starting to go forward with that. So we're trying to take some of those bigger item costs and put them into buckets where we can take donations and try to offset that. And continuing to maintain kind of the basic supplies. Andy Miller has done a really good job of saying, okay, here's our kit. What are the 90% items, and then what can we stock on rescue to cover some of the 10% that are bigger expense items? So he's brought a lot of his experience from DART over to the department, and it has changed some of the ways that we've operated, and I think he's done a really good job of putting that on pace.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And then my other question was the two comp lines in the budget.
Yep.
Is it, is the delta because of more accurate reflection of the hours that you and admin are working, and, or, a more updated wage?
I think it's 3 factors. I think it's the delta of the hours that we're working. I think it's the wage component, and I think it is the volume of administrative requirements continue to increase. So it's kind of the 3-headed monster all coming together. I know Mike and I have talked, it has changed a lot in the last few years, and it continues to escalate. I think part of it is EMS, part of it is, working more with Andy, tying that part of it in. Part of it is just the change in this community, both from a aging in place and a requirement, I guess is the best way to say it. There's an increasing requirement on our services. Expectation, yeah. So that is definitely changing as I think the population is moving in. That is a different group.
So it's an increase in accurate justification of the hours that are actually being spent. and
It's, if
fair.
anything, an underrepresentation at this point. But I wish I could say it was different than that, but, yeah.
You're up.
I really appreciate your frugality,
Yeah.
how thoughtful you are about expenses. I see that you're in at 13 hours a week for 52 hours at $30. Is that enough? Is that fair?
This is,
I have to
of
ask.
all of the things that I look at, I have grown up here, this is the part that's the most uncomfortable for me, of probably any of
That's
these.
why I'm asking it, because let's put it out on the table.
No, it's, the reality is, no, but I don't know what, yeah, no.
Okay, I mean, because, I know what I pay my carpenters and my electricians and
Yeah.
all, and, it ain't $30 an hour.
No, it's not, and
You can get a high school kid for $30 an hour.
No. I just, we are trying to, the God's honest truth, I think we go 20, we go 25, we go 30, we move this up to a point that whoever replaces me can step in. I look at this and say, we're going 8 to 20. The number is a lot more than that, but I don't know.
I'm sure.
I don't know what, I just, that's the number we kinda settled on sitting here looking at this.
Okay.
And 13 is, not right, but
I can't imagine.
that would be a great week.
I think something else that you should consider is, we talked earlier about the rescue truck, trying to offset personal vehicle usage.
Mhm.
I know that I use mine for calls quite a bit, but the volume of personal vehicle use for the department by the leadership is much greater than the call volume.
I'm sure.
And that's another hidden cost in this space. And I don't even remember what the current per mile is on that. But most of us can't get in and out of the, you know, in and out of a trip to the department without it being like 10 miles, so.
And we tend to, unfortunately, the worse the weather is, the higher the probability is that we're going out. The amount of dings and dents and, yeah, trees that fall on the road in front of you and so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The worse the weather, the more apt to be called.
yeah, which creates a higher probability of personal vehicle damage.
Yeah.
So the more we can shift that towards municipal vehicles, the happier I will be. So,
Yeah.
So how many vehicles does that mean you need?
rescue truck would be great.
Just one vehicle to replace everybody's personal truck?
Well, we still have to all get there.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
No, this is really why, like Ernst, we have been trying for 2 years and we're gonna continue to, and eventually we'll find this unicorn that exists somewhere out there. And
We almost
damn
did.
near had it.
Almost
And
did.
unfortunately, North Carolina had to have a hurricane. And those people, in their suffering, are a much needier place for this beautiful truck that came up and it went directly to North Carolina. And it absolutely should have gone there. If it came to us, I would have said, absolutely take it. So I'm glad that it went there. But we are continuing to work on that program, and the hope is to have more of a forestry type pickup that can go out to a lot of those things, maintain a rescue pickup, and have the three pieces of equipment we have now.
Yeah, my point in the personal vehicle thing was not necessarily to just highlight calls when we go in, but the trips that Aaron makes as chief just to the station to deal with, needing people to deal with maintenance issues, needing to deal with radio upgrades, dealing with just standard clerical or, you know, management type items, requires him to travel back and forth.
So,
And so when we're asking about how much he's getting paid per hour, we're skipping over the personal costs on his own equipment.
so to follow up on that, if you have your rescue truck and maybe a forest fire
Yep.
type truck or vehicle, if you still got the old cruiser, which this year will be a
Pickup
truck,
Mhm.
could that become the chief's personal vehicle that he uses to make all those trips?
It's what Hanover and, sorry to interrupt, but, yeah, like
Yeah.
every town, at Norwich, Hanover, they call car one, it's a chief's car. And
Yeah.
you'll see the Orford, chief, he lives in Orford, the Hanover chief, he's driving back and forth, and it takes, takes the usage off of his car. And I
Right.
think that eventually would be a great perk for the chief of Lyme to have a town vehicle to be able to use, not to take on vacation, but to use it in town, and.
We see that in Florida,
Yeah,
you're in trouble.
honestly, that's never even been like a in my mind. Does it make sense? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you still have to get from your house to the station when you
Yeah.
have a call type situation.
I just,
Unless
and
he
you-
has it at his house.
And using a public vehicle for commuting is always a ticket shop operation, politically.
yeah, and I think,
Getting up at 1 in the morning, it isn't.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the truth. I don't know. I see that, the problem that I'm sitting here logistically saying is there's a lot of days that I'm in and out, and I just don't know where we would house it. Like, in the short term, before like a forestry thing, yeah, we could have something like that, and then if I'm not in town, it could live in the station. I don't have, I don't know.
We
Like,
went
it's
through
not
this
something
with the
I've-
police cruisers going home at night, and I
Yeah.
don't think the selectmen are ready for the fire chief doing the same thing.
Yeah,
There's a public outcry about it.
I don't, the public outcry, I'm not concerned about, frankly. Because my pickup truck is the bastardization of a personal / it has all the lights, the radio, so the amount of holes that I have drilled in my pickup trucks is kind of like it's painful. But it's to help provide what you're talking about.
Well, I'm just wondering because we do replace those vehicles, and the plan was to go to you guys, and
Yeah.
then the lucky highway department got them when they were really beat. But if that would be a better thing, not that it would replace a rescue vehicle
No.
that you're looking for, but perhaps, I mean, one vehicle replacing 6 or 8 people's personal trucks doesn't cut it.
No,
It maybe saves the fire trucks, which is really a good idea, but I was just wondering if that was there and available, if that was not another advantage of something that might not be that expensive.
I think it makes a lot of sense, it's just honestly not anything I'd ever considered.
Okay.
And I usually can say that there's a lot of probabilities that I've thought about that hadn't been something that was on my radar.
Thank you.
I think if we haven't figured this out yet, I think the increase in the chief's stipend, whatever you wanna call it, and the administrative fee, it's really for the craft work. You know, people sign up to volunteer to help, they sign up to train, but they don't sign up to do paperwork. And that is a large part, I think, of what needs to
The
be
frustration.
helped out with here.
Could someone be hired to do that, that's not a firefighter?
That's the administration thing. I've got 2 people that I'm already having conversations with that are either retired fire or, the hard part is it takes a long time to get people kind of up to speed on helping with reporting, et cetera. But I'm beginning conversations with 2, depending on how this shakes out, to put them in those spots.
With the increased call volumes and volunteers that Aaron and prior chiefs are managing, it's no longer a one-person job. It
No.
needs to be delegated administratively to make it a sustainable position. So that's what that administrative cost is.
But it doesn't have to be a fireman.
Correct.
No.
No,
So-
but it can be one that's too
Right.
old to go fight fires anymore.
Yes.
Which is the 2 I'm talking
Easy,
to.
Dick.
Which are like, it's, Dick, that's exactly it, it's finding a couple people who are technologically proficient to be able to get on the computer and be able to do some of the reporting there's a small pool, but yeah, we're looking at that. So, and it's also getting some of the officers, one of the things I'm looking at is kind of the perpetuation component, so the more I can get people who might be like, hey, I might wanna be a chief, that can start to do some of those roles to figure out like, is this something that they wanna continue to do? And they can be compensated while doing some of those. I think it will in the end provide a better perpetuation stream for me. That's my biggest goal, find whoever's gonna come after me, so that we leave this in a good place going forward.
Finding your relief is always tough.
Yep, it's the first job,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
All right, now, we have had some comments from the audience, so to speak. Does anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to either add or question?
Well, I would just say that I think Aaron has been trying to turn all this into a system so that it can be handed off. And it's been a lot of work doing that, and my big concern is burnout. He's using his vacation time to do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, fire department. I guess we have library here too.
Yes, I'm here.
You're pretty well hidden there in the back row.
I didn't bring my pen.
Thank you, guys.
I'll stay with you, Judy. Yeah, Judy, you want moral support, we'll stay.
You can volunteer.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I talked to Andy about that, and they're 22, 23.
Judy, did you get the revised one? 'Cause I need you. Thank you.
What's she giving you the keys?
Key to the city.
That's right.
I turned in my library key a long time ago.
Judy, did you get the change in my email?
I did,
Okay.
I did, I didn't,
I
do
have
anything
one
with it
printed
except
that, right,
have my
to the
jaw
your
drop.
left more.
Yes.
Yep.
It's revised.
Don't worry.
Okay, yeah, I printed it out. so
Okay,
I'm
good.
I don't blame you, it was your predecessor. She
Uh-huh.
called me on Friday night and says, can you open the library Saturday?
Oh, back when we had the Saturday men. Yeah,
All right.
okay, all right,
I wanted
how'd you wanna go about this?
I think the main thing people are interested in is what is static, what is changing and why those changes. We don't have to go in that, you know, you paid $200 for lights last year and you're gonna pay $100 a quarter.
Right, although, funny you should bring that up because we're paying virtually nothing for electricity now that we have the solar
right,
panels
yeah.
on the roof, which is, you know, remarkable considering how they came to us, and, you know, many thanks to the donors and the energy committee who are now working on another project, hopefully, for us. So, yeah, so that is, that's made a nice positive difference to the budget. But, you know, I'll just echo what Aaron was saying in terms of prices and the general cost of upkeep and maintenance, you know, continues to rise, and trying to meet that and not, you know, make too many cuts to our services at the same time brought us to, you know, I had just put in a guesstimate for benefits so that I had some kind of a total to take to you, and I was quite pleased that it was 3.23, but I obviously underestimated what the cost of benefits would be in the coming year. So, so the overall increase to the budget as it stands right now is 4.34%. It's reflected in, not so much in salary. You'll see the 4% and 3.5% increases in salary, which is pretty much in alignment with COLA, or the CIP, depending on what you're talking about. I guess
And
CIP is
Social
actually
Security is 2.5.
Yeah, well, 2.5 is what I worked with, and then I added a 1% merit increase to the staff, and then it's the trustees who determine my increase, and they gave a 4% increase there. So, there's some rearrangement of, no, I think we went back on that, the hours are basically the same. The fact of the matter is that we're terribly understaffed, but, you know, there's not a whole lot that we can do about that right now without, you know, tipping this thing way over. So, you know, it's something to think about for the future. We really need another, full-time person there to handle more of the programming and things that I just, you know, even after working 40 to 60 hours a week, can't get to. And the staff that I have now is terrific, and they do great support work, but there isn't any other sort of professional level work that is being done by anyone other than me, and a lot of that ends up falling to the wayside because there's only so much that can get done. You know, we're growing, you know, we're continuing to hold our own with circulation and visits, and then we continue to have this collaborative relationship with the school. It's changed over time, but we still share a collection, and we do a lot of processing and cataloging for them. Luckily, we have some really wonderful volunteers who help with some of those things. If we didn't have those volunteers, we'd be in more dire straits. But I think that we're a really healthy library. I think that people look to us as a good example of what can be done in the current times with a public library. So I'm proud of what we're doing. Would I like to have even more resources? Of course. The building is, you know, in 1936 and 1980 is when the addition was put on, and we're sort of always patching one thing after another with money that we've gotten through grants or donations. The next thing is we have to replace the double doors that are in the back of the building. They've basically failed, and we want to make them automatic and install a camera so that somebody could come to that door and we could open it for them remotely and make the building that much more accessible. And the estimates that we've received for that are somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000. So we're looking to, you know, write some grants for that. We've, you know, accomplished quite a bit through the generosity of the Friends and the Lyme Foundation and the Burn Foundation. So, you know, what you see here is really the bare bones. It's about maintaining the collection and keeping the building running. So, that's pretty much it. If anybody has any specific questions that I can answer for you, I'd be happy to.
I'll start it out with, you're talking about automatic doors and this type of thing, and a security issue that's come up particularly with schools now.
Mm-hmm.
and I would expect that libraries face somewhat the same risk factors.
Well, you know, we are open to the public, by philosophy, you know, we never lock our doors. But we do keep those back doors locked only because we can't staff the downstairs to keep an eye on who's coming and going. So the back doors, which used to be the town office doors, are the only doors that are kept locked throughout the day. And the automatic open area is really just so that if there's someone out there who needs entry, we can buzz them in, and then it locks
I
again.
thought the SAU was down there.
They're at the school now.
Oh.
Yeah, so we have the entire building now.
Ah,
Mhm.
I guess I'm behind it, it seems.
That's been about a year.
No, that's not too
It's
bad.
pretty recent.
And the other thing that I see with libraries now is people are streaming a lot now rather than,
Mhm.
it used to be big business in libraries was DVDs.
Mm.
And is that still part of library operations or not?
It's still part of it, it's going away, not as fast as audiobooks on CD are going away. As soon as they stopped putting CD players in cars, that really dropped. And then during the pandemic, when people sort of didn't have a choice but to learn how to use the online services of the library, when we were closed for a short period of time, where it just got complicated to get things from the library, then a lot more people sort of jumped on the bandwagon and started downloading audio books that way through our streaming service through Libby. And over the past, I think since 2019, the audio CD lending has dropped something like 72%. So we're purchasing far fewer of those, and you'll see in our line that is called, I've called it audios, I think it's still officially audio tapes, which cracks me up on the budget.
Wow.
But you'll see that half of our annual fee to New Hampshire Downloadable Books comes out of that line that used to go exclusively to buying the CDs. And then we're spending only $1,000 in the coming year on the actual audios on CD. We still have a small, group of people who are doing that, and I feel very strongly that making DVDs and audiobooks on CD available to people is an important response to the kind of digital divide that still exists, where people don't have, affordable internet, or they just don't have access to that kind of equipment that they need in order to use it. So to have that option available remains important to me. And the DVD, you'd be surprised, the DVD usage hasn't dropped as precipitously as the audio. So I think that drop has only been like maybe 27%. We still have people come in and borrow 10, 15 DVDs a week. So, but we're cutting back, appropriately on that as well, and spending more on the digital. Yeah.
Now, does that include the interlibrary loan program with the state, or where does that come in?
That's that's no cost to us. That's just a part of the service that we all provide to each other. If we don't own something, we put it out to the computer program that selects
So
another library that
if
has it.
somebody comes in and wants All Quiet on the Western Front, but asks them to invest in Nicoyas, you can get it.
Yes. They asked for what? I missed what you said.
Invest in Nicoyas.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, we can get just about anything you ask for. Every once in a while, we run up against.
In other words, get it in German, where it was
I
originally
gotcha.
written.
I gotcha. We can do it, we can do it. Yeah, but that is, that's just sort of a shared resource among all the libraries in the state, and it doesn't cost us anything. The state library pays the cost of these vans that make deliveries throughout the state,
Right,
and they come to us.
I didn't know
personally.
whether there was $1,000 a year subscription to
Yeah,
something
no,
like that.
it comes from a grant from the IMLS, the federal fund for museum and library services. Yeah.
I have a question about, or going back to the solar array.
Yeah.
Are you, and this may not be the library's responsibility, but are you like recording the renewable energy credits and selling those as well for revenue? Or?
Yeah, we are, we can track it, and I've got a little app on my phone and everything. And Dina, I think, reports it regularly.
I do,
Mhm.
every month.
I didn't know that existed. I'm in the dark ages of the woods, Bill.
Could you could you explain the relationship with the state library that we download typically Libby and then maybe watch or read on Kindle? How does that, financially, how does that work?
So financially, there's a very complicated formula used by the person at the state library who oversees this program. And it's not necessarily that it has to be connected to a state library. When I worked in Vermont, we sort of created our own system to handle Overdrive, or Libby as it's now known. But the state sort of came forward in New Hampshire and volunteered to manage the funds and the collection and all of that. So that's the way it happens here. There's a cost to each library based on population, circulation, and and looking back like 5 years and averaging it out. And we currently pay somewhere around $2,700 a year into that, which is an incredible bargain when you think about it, because our usage of it is in the thousands. And it's meant to be a supplement to each library's physical collection. You can't get everything, especially if you're working with a budget. It's a good sized budget, but there are a number of hurdles that you have to overcome. Every publisher has a different set of rules about how you can purchase these goods and for how much. Some sell licenses for 36 usages and then you have to buy it all over again. Some won't give you more than one copy at a time, and it's kind of crazy. It's a little bit of the Wild West. And then, and it's a one copy, one user situation, so when you're dealing with the entire state and everybody wants to read The Women by Kristen Hanna, you have to go out and buy 75 copies of this thing, and they don't cost the same. If you walked into a store, there aren't many stores who are selling it right now, but say you went and bought an audiobook on CD, it would cost a regular customer about $50. It costs us only 55% of that cost, whatever that is. If somebody wants it, it's like $24, $25. For that audio CD, we could lend it, in perpetuity, for as long as it lasts anyway. But when you buy a digital version of that, a digital audio version of that book, you're paying $75 to $100 for one copy. It's price gouging, really. There's been lawsuits, it's been crazy. But so if they have to buy, to keep up with the demand, 75 copies of this, you can see how the money just goes, and then the interest wanes, and here you are stuck with 75 copies of this thing that ends up getting weeded. So we have a special program in our library called Libby Advantage, and we have a small fund where if I see a title that's very much in demand by Lyme users, I can go in and buy one copy of that book, and all of you will shoot to the top of the list, no matter how large it is. So I do that every once in a while when I see the demand is high and it's affordable, and hopefully that gives people a good feeling about using that service, because it can be frustrating for some people. But it really isn't, it's not an even alternative to the physical collection because of the difficulty in making a complete collection with everything everybody really wants. So I'd like to encourage people to come in and see what we have too in print, because there's still a lot there that's
Is there any limit to the number of states that you can get a library license for?
I don't think so. I don't know if Libby will stop you after a certain number of cards that you register, but it's sort of frowned upon by some people, unless you have legal residence somewhere, but a lot of people, especially in our area, have both Vermont and New Hampshire. Yeah, they're different. Every state has a different collection, and it's just based on what people are buying that they think that their readers are looking for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Where's Carnegie when you need it?
Yeah.
I know. Back in Pittsburgh somewhere.
Yeah, we're, when I talk about infrastructure or just the general facility, we are running out of space in the library. It's a funny thing because, we're constantly weeding and trying to curate an excellent collection. But it just, the math will tell you that it's gonna continue to grow regardless, because there more and more books are published, and there's a core, number of books that you wanna keep to have a good library that's useful to people. And so eventually you start to, you know, push at the edges, and we're sort of hitting that point. We've had to add an extra set of shelves in our big meeting room downstairs, which has reduced the usage of that space. We can't really fit more than, you know, when, I don't know, it used to be like 32 people or something was the max, and now I think that probably if Aaron came in and measured it out, he'd tell me 25 or something. So while we like to see ourselves as a community center as well, we're starting to lose that ability to be that for people. So that's probably something for the next library director to have to grapple with, but I think that it's something that the town should be aware of, that there's a need, and what the answer is going to be, I don't know. We're sitting on a little postage stamp piece of property there, and I don't know how you feel about a high-rise library in town, but it seems like up is the only way to go.
What happened to the SAU offices?
So they moved over to the school.
Well, now I know where they went, but
Yeah.
those offices are now empty.
Oh, no, it's
Fill them with books.
a much-needed
No?
workroom. It's where our
Oh, okay.
volunteers work, and it was meant, one of the goals was that it might empty my office out a little bit of all of the piles of books that we're working on and stuff, but that's a.
That lends you legitimacy, all those pounds.
Thank you, thank you.
I regularly have meetings at, what is it, Knowlton Library, the new library there in West London.
Hilton?
And one thing I notice when I go in there is, when you go in there around 4 o'clock, there are an awful lot of school kids using their computer terminals. Are we having any of that or not?
We have children come in after school, but, you know, things have changed a little bit over the 12 years that I've been here now. They used to come rushing over to use the computers and play games and stuff online, and we, I don't know if it was anything we did or just sort of the way things changed post-pandemic, but when it's turned into a much quieter after-school time now, where there's homework. We have 3, this is where I think we might have played a role, we just have 3 small Chromebooks that don't have a lot of capability, so, you know, the gathering around it and watching somebody play Minecraft or something is not really all that exciting anymore. But I personally love having the kids come over after school and having that be a place where they feel safe and where they can, you know, get some homework done and visit with friends and
Well, looking at the
get ready for
kids'
sports practice.
terminals in there in West Lead, when I've been there,
Yeah,
they don't seem to be playing games, they seem to be doing homework.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
granted, the economics of the kids that live in West Lebanon are a little different than the kids that live in Lyme,
they'll do
so they
that.
may not have broadband at home.
Well, we definitely have kids who are using, you know, they get the priority with the Chromebooks. If they need it for homework, then that's who gets the Chromebook. And then we have time limits on it,
And
certainly.
so that I can see where there'd be a greater demand proportionally
Yeah,
in that neighborhood.
oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
But my 5-year-old grandson loves to go there just to get a book. He talks about Miss Judy all the time.
Ah.
He loves it. It's very exciting for him to go there.
I love that.
All right, any questions about the library, other than we will look at it again, and we have generally tried to sort of track salary rate increases town-wide rather than, just because the library trustees set the library salaries rather than the selectmen by statute.
Right.
There's some interesting statutory things affecting the library's budget, but we do run it through the selectmen.
Yes, and
But-
I guess, I don't know where they're at with it because we jumped ahead. I was gonna come next
Right.
week to you and see the
Right.
select board tomorrow, but we'll
We're
get
just-
caught
no,
up.
Right, we will.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
So you and I have to do
I
everything
think
first.
legally we can recommend something other than the trustees do, but the select board I don't think can, is the way that law is.
We can
Legally,
ex-
they can, but yeah.
We can
Can we?
express an opinion
That's right.
and we can put in our budget, but yes, the trustees certainly have the final say. We've been through this
Right.
before.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's not open that wound again.
Yeah, well, I would
It's
like, not to get into that generally,
Yeah,
the three boards have generally come to a meeting of the minds.
I think so, and I would hope it's because we all recognize why those statutes exist, right?
Right.
And it has to
I
do
mean,
with our
there are
access to.
some people around that would cut the library to 0 if they had a choice. And if they
Send
got
them to me,
elected.
Dick, send them to me.
Send them right over there, they're volunteers.
But anyway, does anybody on the committee have a question for, anybody in the audience have a question?
Hi, audience.
Yes.
Well, no, we still have audience.
Some audience.
You need books in the firehouse?
No, I was just thinking like,
No, she'll take it.
like technology standpoint, like what are, in a perfect world, what would you wanna have there?
For technology?
Yeah,
Well, it's interesting because our needs have sort of diminished in a lot of ways. We used to have 10 public computers, and we now have 2,
Okay.
and there's never a line or anything like that. Then we have those 3 Chromebooks. But we've got 2 desktops, a Mac and a PC, and those are definitely used, but there isn't any greater demand because most people who come in with their own laptop or just their device. But what the demand has increased for printing. We have become Noman North, and people will, and several times a week, we will hear from some people who say they are sick and tired of dealing with their printer. Can I print this here? Yes, and then they realize they can print right from their phone, and it's as though we're miracle workers, you know? And it really has.
You are a miracle worker.
In other words, they have a
It really-
high-speed laser printer that they don't have at home?
And they just are tired of buying ink or toner or something, and they can't get it on their wireless or something, so it's amazing how much that demand has increased while the other stuff has decreased. One of the things that I think we really could use is a new AV system, and we're still working off of a pretty basic projector and screen with some funky speakers and DVDs being broadcast. Someone donated a large screen TV to us recently. We haven't installed it yet because we've been doing some painting, but.
How often do you use the AV?
Well, it's available to anybody who wants to use the meeting room. We use it for showing movies to kids or adults. Sometimes we have a film series. And then speakers, generally will want to use that. So it's pretty frequent. Yeah, so, we work with what we've got. It's okay, but I think that it's getting pretty outdated. Yeah, it's,
alright, yeah, okay.
okay. All right.
I have one- yeah,
Okay.
Bill. Just one more
Yeah.
question. Have you given any thought, based on the increased usage of your printing capabilities, for charging so much a copy or going that route, or?
We do charge. We charge 15 cents for a black and white copy and 25 cents for a color copy. We recently reviewed our policy on computer and printer use, and the board decided that those fees were adequate, and they didn't want to raise them. They thought we were, essentially providing a much appreciated service, and as long as we were paying for the upkeep of our printers, that was sufficient, and we are. We pay out of our petty cash the cost of the service contract with WB Mason, and for the copier anyway. And, there was another part that I was gonna answer to that.
Toner for
That comes out of this budget, the toner and the,
That's
we've got that
expensive
bottom
all the
line,
time.
the computer maintenance and supplies, where we're asking for, a higher amount this year, which has to do with a whole other thing that we're talking about with the select board about how we make our payments. But, faxing is still, remains a very key service too.
people still
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, copper line faxing, yeah,
That's amazing.
2-3 times a week. Government agencies, real estate agencies, health agencies, they all want you to use a regular old fax machine.
I retired 20 years ago and we'd gotten rid of fax machines.
Yeah, we
The
still have it.
government hasn't. I interact with the government on, maybe a weekly basis, and it's like snail mail. I was floored a couple months ago when they were like, just fax it to me. And I was like, what planet are you on? Because I don't even know if I have a fax machine.
Well, what it really comes down to, I think, is that you can't hack a copper line.
Yeah.
And so they just wanna stick with it as long as they possibly can, so. That's that.
Well,
Thanks, Judy.
we were usually on classified lines.
Yeah, well,
Which
if
you
you've got
would
somebody
ask.
sending to the government, then you want them to be on it. Okay, well, thank you for your time, I
Thank you very much,
appreciate it.
Judy, for coming in.
Sure, if anybody has any further questions, you know where to find me.
Oh, yeah, from us, okay, all right, take
And we'll
care.
come see you and see what we
All
have
right.
in our
Do we have any other business, since police was not gonna be able to come in today?
acquisitions, we keep any of them.
There's
Oh,
no,
I see, okay.
No,
Well, that sounds.
I already promised him, he was on.
Yep. Anybody have anything they wanna take up with us, or can we, can I accept a motion to adjourn and everybody go home?
So moved.
second.
Well, and I should say Sean's not coming because he had previous plans that he could not change. I made it sound like he's just not coming.
Just must withdraw.
Well, I asked him, I said, you still want me to send him?
Hey, Gina?
He said, yeah.